So, there are a lot of advantages in investing in rentals as a couple, but we think you likely already know why you want to invest, with the main reason being able to secure financial security and flexibility for your livelihood. Unfortunately, for many couples, it's not so easy to work together to make this goal a reality. There can be issues with one person having animosity if one works harder than the other. There can be trust issues with making sure each person is doing their part, and sometimes perspectives change and both of the spouses are not on the same page anymore. Those, plus more, are all issues couples in real estate face, and we're going to give tips on how to avoid or at least minimize the frustrations that can arise. Welcome to your Landlord Resource Podcast. Many moons ago, when I started as a landlord, I was as green as it gets. I may have had my real estate license, but I lacked confidence and the hands-on experience needed when it came to dealing with tenants, leases, maintenance, and bookkeeping. After many failed attempts, fast forward to today, Kevin and I have doubled our doors and created an organized, professionally operated rental property business. Want to go from overwhelmed to confident? If you're an ambitious landlord or maybe one in the making, join us as we provide strategies and teach actionable steps to help you reach your goals and the lifestyle you desire, all while building a streamlined and profitable rental property business. This is your Landlord Resource Podcast. Hey there, landlords. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the Your Landlord Resource Podcast. My name's Stacy, and I'm here with Kevin. And for those of you who may not know, where Kevin is not only my podcast co-host and my business partner, he's my husband and right-hand man. We have been running and operating our businesses together for over 12 years now. But even more fun is that 1 year ago, we started this podcast, and this is our 52nd episode.
Seriously, can you believe that? I mean, that went by really fast. It's been a whole year and we really just started to get our groove with this podcast. I think we're doing all right.
I think so. It's a lot of work, but finally, I think we're feeling comfortable with the production and the execution of everything. So, with this being our 1 year birthday of our podcast, we thought that doing an episode about owning and operating rental properties with a spouse or a partner would be a good one to do. And not a business partner. We're talking life partner. So, someone that you're going to eat and sleep and work and make all your big decisions about life with. Now, this episode will be stories between Kevin and I, as well as tips from several of our Insta friends who are couples that work together on their real estate investments. It's nice having that social media out there to you don't feel so alone when you see other people posting stuff too. So, all right, Kev. So I won't say that we never fight about work, but on occasion we have our differences. And I think that we're at a place in life where we know what matters most and resolve our differences fairly quickly.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think as you get older, I don't know, maybe it's when you realize that fighting about something silly like work, it's just not worth it. And maybe it's just that in the realm of life, fighting in general just gets you nowhere. I am, or I guess I should say, I've never been a person that likes conflict. I know there's people that thrive off it and it gets them all fired up, but that's just not me.
Yeah, well, there was a time when I was like that. But to be honest, it was stuff going on within my life that made me feel really overwhelmed and frustrated. And I would absolutely lash out at people and still do on occasion for sure. But I'll say I'm not proud of those moments. They got me nowhere. And all they did was get the person that I'm lashing out at angry and frustrated too. But I'll say that life is hard for some people. They want to do better, and stuff just keeps getting thrown at them, which in turn creates a really negative outlook. And that is hard to work out of. For me, and I want to emphasize that what I'm about to say is how I was able to move past that negative energy. And that was by prayer and working on my mindset. And I knew there was a better life for me out there. And you guys, I had been through hell. So here's the story. My late husband was very ill, and in his last years, he was pretty angry and frustrated and took a lot of that out on his family. So here I am with a husband who has a limited amount of time left to live and with three boys at very crucial ages for self development. I was doing my best to keep everyone afloat financially and emotionally. And seriously, I had thoughts that I didn't know if I could do it. I had many friends who surrounded me and some who fled because it was too much for them. And I get it now. I didn't back then, but I get it now. And my family, my parents, my sister, they were amazing and by my side helping me every day, along with my closest friend who had kids the exact same age as mine. And let me tell you, when you're going through hell or a really tough time in your life, you learn who you can rely on very quickly. Luckily for me, they not only stepped up with helping with the kids and with my daily routine, they supported me emotionally and gave me time to do things like go to therapy and work through all that was going on during this very difficult time. They would send me quotes to keep me fighting and reminders not to lose myself. They would take me to lunch and give me days to look forward to. And if you've ever been through tough times, you likely know that having one thing each week to look forward to is significant. This method of one positive thing to focus on helps to reduce stress. And that reduced stress allows you to rest your mind and find gratitude. And that gratitude is what ultimately pulled me through this horrible time of my life. I had people who loved and supported me, and they did not back down. I had a roof over my head and food on my plate. And in the end, that is really what matters. So when I say that Kevin and I don't really fight, I feel it's because we both have an understanding that in the realm of life, what matters is love and health and safety and security. And everything else will fall into place if you can believe that it's worth it. So sorry for the babble, but I think that there's others out there who are struggling and maybe this will help them a little bit.
No, don't apologize. That's part of our story, and we need to tell it so our listeners understand. So today's episode is, as Stace mentioned, about owning the operating rental properties with your spouse and tips on how to best manage this. We have tips and real life examples from Stacy and I. Plus, we reached out to many other husband and wife rental property teams and asked their advice. And we got some really great answers for them to share as well. So let's start off with why investing in rental properties with your spouse or life partner is a good thing. For starters, it allows you to make your financial and life goals a reality much quicker. As many of you know, when you're first starting out, as a couple with both of you working, you can attempt to live off one income and save the other in order to raise the capital to get started in real estate investing. Or if there's a family situation and one parent stays home while the other works, that person can handle much of the responsibility of property management to help save money on hiring someone to do the work. There are very little legal complications owning rental properties with a spouse either. A few weeks ago, we talked about basic tax advantages for rental property owners. There is a number of tax advantages available to real estate investors, so if you're a dual earning household, those tax advantages can really help reduce your tax liability. And as we discussed in episode 46, when we talked all about advanced tax strategies, if one spouse is not working, they may be able to qualify for the real estate professional status, which is a huge tax benefit. We'll make sure to link both those episodes in the show notes for you to go back and give them a listen.
So there are a lot of advantages in investing in rentals as a couple, but we think you likely already know why you want to invest, with the main reason being able to secure financial security and flexibility for your livelihood. Unfortunately, for many couples, it's not so easy to work together to make this goal a reality. There can be issues with one person having animosity if one works harder than the other. There can be trust issues with making sure each person is doing their part, and sometimes perspectives change and both of the spouses are not on the same page anymore. Those plus more are all issues couples in real estate face. And we're going to give tips on how to avoid or at least minimize the frustrations that can arise. This goes without saying, but communication is key. Not only do you need to be able to express your thoughts and frustrations, you need to be able to communicate about how you see your future because that right there is why you're investing in real estate in the first place. How fast do you want to grow and scale? What do you expect from this growth? Not just financial, but of management as well. Is the ultimate goal to supplement one income, both incomes? So maybe you can travel and enjoy life, get out of the 9 to 5 grind and get your time back. Or maybe you just want to be able to pay for your kids to go to college. Or are you older and late bloomers like Kevin and I and looking to have a secure retirement? And shoot, maybe it's all the above.
Yeah, it's always a really good idea to communicate about your goals. I mean, one spouse might be looking for a risky or quick profit, while the other might prefer safer investments and less risk. If I could go back and tell my 30-year-old self what I know now, life would be much different for us.
Yeah, but would your 30-year-old self listen?
Yeah, not likely. Things were different back then. There wasn't near the information so readily available than there is today.
Yeah, 30 years ago, I had one rental, a single family home. And man, do I still wish I had that house. And unfortunately, when my late husband got ill, I was left to manage it, and I knew nothing at the time. I had two young children, and when I asked my dad for help, he suggested I sell it so that I could reduce my stress level. So we did sell it, and I regret that decision to this day.
So I guess you say making decisions during stressful and difficult times is not advised?
Oh, God, absolutely not if it can be avoided. I think people should certainly weigh their options, but avoid making a big decision to buy or sell or remodel a property until both parties have had a chance to sit and process their thoughts for a while.
Which brings us to our first tip, and that's to make sure everyone's on the same page. You and I know that in order to afford rental properties, at some point there needs to be a sacrifice made. And oftentimes, couples will tighten their belt in order to save for the next property, which is what Casey Franchini of Brick by Brick Wealth expressed. She says, my tip would be that both parties need to be on the same page. Sometimes, when it comes to buying real estate, other sacrifices need to be made. For years, we didn't buy new cars or go on fancy vacations, didn't buy designer handbags or splurge. That was what allowed us to save money for our first rental properties and subsequent properties. If my husband was not on board with that, it would have been hard to accomplish what we have accomplished. And guess what? Sacrificing and going without for a goal that seems light years away is hard.
Oh my gosh, yes. The struggle is real. There will be friends going on trips to Hawaii or getting brand new SUVs, while others are going to look on with their family camping trips and their trusty old minivan. And you guys, there's nothing wrong with any of that, either side. My point is that when you know you have the money to buy or do anything you want, but your decision is to keep saving so you can buy a rental, that is dedication. That focus and determination is a challenge to keep up on. And if this is you, keep your eye on the prize.
So Stacy and I and our whole family were recently able to be present and witness our oldest son's proposal to his girlfriend. It was an amazing experience and we were so honored to be able to be part of it. But once that happens, you start thinking about money when there are big celebrations coming up. And even though everyone involved has the money to spend on a really nice wedding, that's a whole lot of cash to drop on one day. Her dad, like ourselves, works hard for his income. And just because we have the money doesn't mean we're going to give him carte blanche when it comes to planning the wedding.
Yeah, that's a tough one for sure. We know how much we are comfortable with putting forth, as Kevin and I have already discussed it. but she's a girly girl and has been dreaming of this day for her whole life. And I get it. I had 2 dream weddings. So, I mean, I was fortunate enough to have that. So, I understand that. And, let's hope that this is a once in a lifetime event for them both. But I think what Kevin's point is that no matter what you're spending your money on, both of you in the relationship need to be on the same page. Decisions to buy a rental property, a car, or contribute or pay for a wedding is something to be discussed. So let's move on to the next tip, and that is to make sure both partners are in on the plan from the start. And where this is similar to being on the same page, we're talking about it in a different context. So, Ahili and Gabriel of the Hungry Investors say it's important to keep checking in throughout the year. We've seen a lot of landlord couples lose steam and get into issues because one person is super passionate about landlording and real estate and the other one isn't. This checking in can always be a fun activity, and we love combining our landlord quote unquote business meetings with a nice snack and drink. So always make sure to schedule your non business talk time together. I think that's a great point.
Yeah, I really like that last part too. I mean, where Stacy and I are really good about checking in weekly, we don't create a non-business talk time.
Yeah, well, that's because I could talk business 24/7.
That's exactly what I mean. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. For the record, she's sticking her tongue out at me.
Yes, I am, but that's okay. I get it. And I think that because we have a couple of income streams, I'm always thinking about how to improve one or the other. And I'm always wanting to bounce ideas off you. So, if you guys caught our New Year, New Landlord episode earlier this year, you might remember that Kevin and I are working on time blocking so that we can try to be more productive. And we're getting better at it, but it's definitely a work in progress. Maybe I just need to block more time for brainstorming.
And there you have a solution. I like it. So Danielle Dickens from Fit to Invest Danny had a similar tip and said, my toughest issue has always been feeling alone as my husband wasn't interested at first. But eventually he saw how passionate I was about real estate and has slowly started joining in learning about it. I think having defined roles really helps us. He's the fix it guy, and I'm the brains behind the scenes. I find the deals, come up with the ideas, figure out our next move, and we'll ask him for his input and thoughts if I'm stuck. Being more supportive of each other, even if one person is more into it than the other person. So, that last part was really something that was mentioned earlier, and that is how to cope if one person has more responsibility than the other, and maybe there's some animosity there. So, if it's a situation where one person is working full time and the other stays home, and the other who stays home has to carry the weight, and with little help from the other spouse, you can bet there's going to be some resentment. That resentment will lead to arguments, and once that starts, it's really hard to turn things around. So, most couples we surveyed all said the same thing. Couples need to have clear roles and defined responsibilities. Anam and Amir of The Hashes Invest say this: here is our biggest piece of advice if landlording together as a couple. Have clear roles within your business to avoid constant arguments and battles. If you clearly write down job roles between the two of you, it helps keep things moving without every little decision needing to be discussed. And Herb Honor from Honor Empire recommends to work as a team. One person communicates with the tenant, and the other spouse is the decision maker, hardcore person. This is because if the tenant is late on rent or you refuse to renew the lease because of issues throughout the year, it's easy to make a decision because one of the spouses isn't emotionally connected.
Yeah, I like that one. If one of the spouses tends to be a softie and that's not working for your business, then consider the roles that each of you have. Just because one person does a role does not mean that they're going to be good at it. This is why it's important to check in and have kind, productive discussions about your rental property business and its procedures, like Eric and Jellery of Winning with REI. And they say, I think the best tip is to recognize the skill sets you and your partners have so you can streamline business processes. For instance, I do most of the setup for bookings / website, and my husband handles vendor and guest communication. We're able to keep things running smoothly this way. And Kier and Todd Vogt of Real Estate Kier agree and had this to say: our advice is to stay in your lane when working with a spouse. Figure out what each person's role will be and what tasks are whose responsibility. It happened naturally for us and it worked out really well. Basically, Todd does all the stuff I hate to do, and I do all the things he doesn't like to do. It's perfect. So, for example, I don't mind screening tenants, working with the city departments, handling tenant issues, doing leases or the books, etc. And Todd does all the maintenance, manages our subcontractors, runs around for parts and supplies when they're needed, and he's even currently doing the lawn and snow removal. Obviously, we're self managing and deep in the weeds. That you are. Those two are growing super fast and they have their hands on a lot of projects all at once, but they're doing really well and we're so happy and excited for them.
Most people tend to marry someone with an educational and professional background very different from their own. This means that if you go working with your spouse in real estate investing, you two are likely to bring different and hopefully complementary experiences, expertise, and even personalities to your common real estate investing business. In this sense, it's better to buy and manage a rental property with your spouse rather than on your own so you can both contribute with your strengths. Plus, sometimes spouses just don't have the opportunity to be together and spend time with each other. This is even more likely to be the case if one of those two decides to go for real estate investing in addition to his or her 9 to 5 jobs. So, it might actually be a good idea to work with your spouse in real estate investing, as this will give you the chance to spend more time together, doing something that's good for the whole family.
Yeah, it has been over 15 years since Kevin and I worked traditional 9 to 5 job. And that has allowed us time to be there for the boys when we otherwise would not have been able to. For such things as volunteering in their schools, like driving on field trips, or Kevin when he was coaching for their sports. So, along these same lines, we heard from our Hawaii friends, Kamohai and Tristan, who recently launched a show on HGTV called Renovation Aloha. We have been watching their show where they, as a couple, buy very dilapidated homes. Then they go in and renovate them, flipping them as a business. Not only do they have to work together as husband and wife, but they're working together on TV. So you can only imagine the challenges those two face. So they reached out, and their advice for couples working together is to make sure your business is operated in a professional manner. The biggest lesson they learned and had to work through dealt with tenant screening. And they recommended that landlords check credit and do thorough background checks, like calling all the landlords and personal references, as well as speaking with their employer. They said setting these policies has really decreased the tension when things go wrong with a tenant, and you're not going to regret it. And I think that Kevin and I second that. Having solid policies and criteria in place has made business decisions between both of us so much easier. And along those same lines, as we've mentioned before, Kevin and I are in the beginning stages of building an online course to show you how to place your ideal tenant in your rental properties. It's going to cover all aspects from marketing, like photographing your unit and placing your ad, to showings and accepting applications, and of course, the whole vetting process that we follow. We're also going to include what we do when we move a new tenant in with regards to inspections, welcome gifts, and our unit binder, all that good stuff. There's quite a bit to know about this process, and quite frankly, I think we do it really well. If this course is something you'd like more information on, we're going to include a link in the show notes so you can get on our waiting list. All right, let me get back to the subject at hand and talk about owning rentals with your spouse or life partner. So, some challenges that can arise with working with your spouse in real estate or any other business for that matter is personality conflicts. If either spouse tends to have a controlling personality with the need to always have the final say, that can be problematic. What does that look on your face?
Nothing, nothing at all. Just curious what else you have to say about someone's controlling personality.
Wow. What I was going to say was that if it's something that is tolerated at home, it might not be so easy to tolerate it in the professional relations of your real estate investing business.
Well, for me, I'm able to tolerate it in both situations.
Wow. Hey, I do like to have control. And if nothing, I am aware, but I'll also say that that control has driven us farther than we ever thought we could get. However, with that said, I think we do a good job of keeping our personal relationship and our business relationship separate. Because if you can't do that, any tensions on one side are automatically going to be transferred to the other.
I 100% agree. We've come a long way in our ability to communicate. And there was a time I'd get upset because I thought you were giving me the silent treatment. And I learned that often it really wasn't the case. You're a person when you have a big decision to make or something that's a no-win situation, it's going to upset someone. You have to take time to process it. You're also someone who really does consider all the options and the outcomes and their effects on our current situation and future goals. All right, here's a case in point. We have never had to evict a tenant. But during the pandemic, we had this guy living in our studio who lost his job and stopped paying the rent. And we were like, okay, we had several other units that were going good and we had enough to cover his rent. Plus, we were also very prepared with our reserves. Unfortunately, this tenant, likely from the stress, began drinking day and night and essentially was an alcoholic. We had done an inspection in November and everything was great. We went back in May and man, the unit was destroyed. We gave him a week notice and oh my God, I thought Stacy was going to cry. She was so upset. The floor showed evidence of a flood. There were muddy footprints all over the floor from the bathroom to the front door. He also had a fruit fly infestation he had never reported us. So there was, I kid you not, fruit fly feces on absolutely every single surface. The window blinds, the cabinets, light switches, inside the fridge and freezer, as well as on the washer and dryer.
Okay, you guys, this scenario still makes my stomach churn till today. I went up on the ladder to replace the battery on the smoke detector. It's hardwired, by the way, so the battery is not on the outside. I had to remove the whole unit to replace the backup battery. When I twisted it to remove the old one, a bunch of dead flies fell out, and the wires that are connected to the detector were covered with eggs. Absolutely disgusting. So here we are, working really hard not to say or do anything to this guy that could get us in trouble, but we're feeling all the feels from anger and disgust to, I don't want to do this anymore. And I know there's a lot of you out there that have had experienced days like this, and God love you, but this was our first, and we were not okay. We took all the photos and had to get back to the office. We had to do some research. One, because it was the pandemic and we had to reread all the eviction moratorium laws. And two, because alcoholics and addicts are protected by fair housing laws. We consulted our lawyer and found that we essentially had to ask this tenant to leave because of the unreported flood and likelihood of mold growing, which there was on the outside walls, as well as under the old school luxury vinyl flooring that was not waterproof or water resistant and swelled up like crazy. It took him a while to get out, though, and I have to say, both Kevin and I had a hard time with it. I was not okay with him staying. I was livid and really took it personal that he was so irresponsible. And Kevin, on the other hand, has a heart of gold and felt bad that we were taking someone who was in a bad way and kicking him to the curb. But tenant relations are my responsibility. So goodbye, Charlie, it was.
Hey, don't get me wrong. I was upset too. I mean, we had to replace most everything in that unit, and that we really didn't have the funds to do. All the appliances, the flooring, the bathroom, a window, and all the sheetrock around it, the blinds, etc. We were able to remove the kitchen cabinet doors and we finished those, but the whole unit had to be painted top to bottom with a special primer for smells, mold, and to cover all the fly feces. And since I'm the lead for maintenance, a lot of that was put on my plate, and I didn't appreciate the sudden extra work to complete. But I knew in my gut the guy had to go. And yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm human and I felt for the guy. He really wasn't a jerk or blamed us for his misfortune. He just asked for extra time to find a place to live. And I think it is worthy to note that he did email us about a year ago and apologize for the whole thing. He likely was going through his 12-step program, and I thought it was nice that he reached out to us. We lost a lot of money on that guy, so his apology was a good way to end it.
Yep. And you guys, I come from a long line of addicts and have lost several family members to it. So part of my anger was probably derived from my anger with those family members who put us through hell. So there's that. And remember, we said that earlier that it's best not to allow emotions from outside elements define how you act or react in your business. This was one time for me that I let that happen. So let's move on to a couple more points that we can make about working with your spouse and how it's tough. If something goes wrong, it's really easy to play the blame game. Now, this can cause serious problems for your business and for your marriage. And I'm thankful to say that Kevin and I really don't do that whole if you had done this or that, we wouldn't be dealing with this situation right now thing. We are both people who can take responsibility and own up to our mistakes and our failures and learn from them. Another thing about working together is, funny enough, too much togetherness. And I know I said earlier that the nice thing about working together is that you get to spend more time together. But on the other hand, too much time together at work and at home can be really a hard situation, regardless of how much you love each other. So, if this is something that you think might be a problem, think of ways that you can separate your time, whether it be having a separate office space or time blocking your errands for one while the other one does a task like bookkeeping. Whatever it is, separation is not a bad thing. And the last thing is that both of you get so focused on the business and succeeding at it that you don't have time to do anything fun or spend time with your kids. And we are all for teaching the kids the ropes and bringing them to the properties to do work on the weekends, but they need quality time with you too. Remember, if one of the reasons you are investing in real estate is to create a better life for your family, then make it a better life for your family. Don't make it worse.
And we're guilty of this too. We won't say we're workaholics, but there are many weekends we find ourselves catching up on work and not enjoying life. I mean, today's a good example. It's a Saturday afternoon and we're sitting here recording the podcast, although it's a little easier when it's raining and storming outside and not nice and sunny. But we do have to take time to take the dog for a walk or go out with our son to do something fun, not just wait for a scheduled event to do this stuff. Okay, almost there, guys. Amanda Hahn and her husband, I believe his name is Matt, wrote an article for Forbes magazine. When Stacy reached out to her for her contribution to the episode, she gave us permission to share it, so we'll link it in the show notes for you. But the gist of the article is everything we've discussed today. Her first tip is to set clear and realistic goals. Again, as many other investors said, Amanda says you need to be on the same page about what you want to achieve with your investments. She gives the example of one spouse wanting a short-term fixer-upper by the beach and the other wanting a long-term one in the city, and recommends taking the time to discuss and build upon a joint vision of your investment journey. Goal setting is great and can help you stay focused and motivated, but make sure the financial goals are realistic and that you understand the property's potential rental income and expenses so you know it's a good investment for you both.
Kevin and I did this. Each year, we have a goal setting meeting, and then we do our best each month to meet and make sure we're still on the same page. For instance, we're getting ready to sell a single family home and scale up to one or several multifamily properties. We know what we should do, but we're still deciding what is best for us right now and what is best for us in the future. Should we buy another multiplex in Idaho so it's convenient? Or should we buy a couple like fourplexes in the Midwest? Neither of us has a definitive answer yet, and it will likely be a decision that we make at the last minute after the property is sold, so we'll know how much capital that we're dealing with. As we mentioned earlier, good communication is key, and Amanda mentions this in her article as well. She says, make sure you communicate openly and honestly with each other about your expectations. It's important to avoid making assumptions and instead ask questions to clarify any doubts or misunderstandings. And I'm going to paraphrase this next part, but each of you need to know how you plan to spend time working on the property. If neither of you like to do rehab work, then choose a property that is more turnkey. If you do not know how much work to expect, lean on outside advice to help you make informed decisions. And just as many other investors have stated, divide your investment responsibilities. Make sure to work to each other's strengths and weaknesses to ensure that you both play an active role in the investment process. And along those same lines, create a clear plan outlining the details of your investment. Basically, like what's your buy box. But you both should be on the same page about the property type, the location, the purchase price, what your financing options are, loan terms, and your expected returns. The plan should be a roadmap that you both can follow to achieve your shared goals. And Amanda makes a great point too, and that is to make sure you document everything in writing and have a strong understanding of each other's roles. For example, investing in short term rentals can come with some pretty significant tax savings. By spending the right number of hours and doing the right activities, you may even be able to strategically create some tax losses and offset your W 2 or other income. Remember earlier how we mentioned becoming a real estate professional has some major tax advantages? You're going to need to know who will earn these hours and how you're going to document it. These are things to work out ahead of time so you have a clear plan of attack. And our last point is one we already made and suggested that you go back and listen to our basic and advanced tax strategy episodes, but that is, don't forget about tax deductions. When you invest with a spouse, it can help turn more of your personal expenses into legitimate business deductions.
Yeah, you guys, those tax episodes are quickly becoming two of our most listened to podcasts. There is a lot of good stuff in there you need to know. Well, hey, we hope you've learned a thing or two about investing with your spouse. It can be fun and exciting, or it could be dreadful, and only you guys can figure out what works best for you. I'm sure you already knew a lot of this, so maybe it was just a good reminder, but regardless, we really do appreciate you listening to our podcast. If you love what you hear, would you do us a huge favor and leave us a kind review so we can continue to reach other rental property owners? We really need other listeners to know how our podcast has helped you and what you love about listening to us each week. You can find a link in the show notes for your review. And while you're at it, would you also follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform? Your downloads each week allow us to grow and reach other rental property investors. Lastly, we would really love to connect with you. We have a really good weekly newsletter called Landlord Weekly. It's free and it has all kinds of tips and articles for rental property owners, our favorite products, and links to listen to the podcast that you can sign up for. We will link it in the show notes along with the links to our private Facebook group and social media sites. I don't believe I get to say this, but until next time, you've got this, landlords.
Oh, good job.
Thanks. Take care, guys.